This week, a custom leather Jedi belt, and we're gonna check out the Felon Fair Ranger boots. Let's go! Hey, how's it going? Anthony Fro here, Crate Sci-Fi. Today, I'm very excited. We're gonna make a custom Jedi leather belt, but first, Felon Fair is a Ren Fair sort of cosplay LARP medieval fantasy company, and they have these boots which have been a lifelong quest of mine to find the perfect boots, and I found them. These are amazing. They're very well made, really nice leather. This could be on a ranger character, right? A medieval, you're a hunter, you're some kind of knight or something. As an example today, a Jedi costume. These can be any kind of like futuristic rogue pirate character. These could be a military guy, right? So it's Felon Fair. They're the fantasy tall ranger boots, the fantasy tall ranger boots. Can't say enough how awesome these boots are from Felon Fair. So I'll link below. Great boots. So today we are going to make a custom Jedi belt. You can use like straps of leather. I did mine from a shoulder of leather, but it's a pretty inexpensive thing to do. Now, I did add some 3D printing to mine, but that was totally optional, like 110% optional. I just wanted to experiment, and I did these sort of embossing, and I did that by 3D printing. And I also use a 3D printed buckle, but that's just because I'm a big guy. I made my belt a little bigger, and I had the real buckle, but it was just too small. But so none of these 3D printed parts you need. So it's basically strips of leather, Chicago screws, and a buckle, and some dye, and a knife, and it's just look at that. So cool. And then there's that lightsaber that I made from the dollar store. That thing looks amazing. All right, so kicking it off with the random 3D printing, but not random. So this is totally optional. So I'm just making these plates for the text, and here's the buckle and those sort of energy caps, whatever. So here's the buckle that I'm gonna repurpose from the actual costume, and I cut that off. I'm not sure yet. I mean, we know that I'm gonna use the bigger one, but at this point, I'm not sure yet what I'm gonna do. So I'm prepping this. It looks like pressed. Even though it's metal, it still looks like pressed, so I'm gonna paint this black, and I'm gonna treat it later when I treat the 3D printed. So I put that aside for now. So now here I have this shoulder of leather. I like working from the shoulders because I can usually get a thicker piece, but you can buy those blank belt straps. I'll link to those, and that's totally fine. This, just because I want a little thicker belt, a little longer belt, work from the shoulder. And then also I like having this hide on hand if I wanna make pouches or other things in the future. This usually will last me about a year of my little like holster projects and whatnot. So this is a strap cutter, very simple, very awesome tool, and I'm just cutting the belt straps, right? Making belts is pretty straightforward. And the core of the Jedi belt is the wide belt in the inner thin belt, so we're halfway there. Easy, done, go home. All right, so now one of the features of the Jedi belt is sort of that it's not a real buckle, right? It's like mystery, like how does it stay together? And from what I can tell, or things that I've seen that make sense to me, is you put this sort of piece on the back, this sliding piece, and then that covers up like the traditional buckle, it hides it. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting a blank out of foam, and this is gonna be my form for shaping the leather, right? So I measured out the leather here so that it's wide enough to accept two thicknesses of the leather belt and the buckle, right? So I'm cutting this out, just made that out of a paper pattern. And then here is sort of this cookie cutter that I'm gonna use to emboss the leather with. So veggie tan leather, very easy to work with, almost like foam. So you put it in the water for not even, like 30 seconds. And now look, it's almost like clay in a way. So here I'm shaping it around this form, right? So that form that I created is what is going to give it the space to fit the doubled over belt, right? So here I'm taking popsicle sticks to clamp this, because what I found is that if you don't put something like the popsicle sticks, the clamps will indent into the leather, right? So here, right, this is a negative reversed raised lettering, and this is just going to add like a little something to this. And again, this is me experimenting. You can totally skip this step. This is an extra step that I'm just adding because I was just curious about doing this. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing to the belt. So what I need to do here is find the dead center of this belt, because I want it to be in the center, like right underneath the buckle, right? So here I just find the middle, put it in the water, place that on there carefully, right? Because it's like no turning back. And again with the popsicle sticks, but that's more to get sort of an even pressure from these clamps. And this stuff probably would be okay in a couple hours, but I just leave them all overnight so that when I come back the next day, it's all got the impression. And I think I probably oversaturated those with water. You really don't need that much, but you know, it is what I did. So, you know, 21st century, I really want this pouch for wallet and keys, but no, you really just want it to fit your cell phone. So I'm basing the size of this around the cell phone, right? And again, we're just making a simple paper pattern. This is just copy paper, right? And mock it up. And then once that's mocked up, then we're going to transfer it to the leather. But whenever making patterns like paper and cardboard, it's always worth it to do that first, because it gives you a very good indication if it's going to work, and you don't want to go through all that and have it not fit, right? And here I'm just rounding off the edges. You know, that jar of putty was handy at the desk, so that's what the edges are, right? Don't have to overthink it. Now here I want to add tabs. So I'm just using the painter's tape to give me that little bit of extra material on my paper so that I can create a tab. And again, you know, you could probably measure this all out in like Illustrator or a CAD program, but I just find, you know, making patterns out of paper, touching them, seeing what fits, it's a more satisfying way to me to do it. And it's also an easy way to do it, right? So here I'm making another foam buck for the core of, you know, this sort of Jedi pouch / cell phone holder. Right, so I'm making sure everything fits around there, and you'll see later I'm actually going to adjust it even more, but you know, it's all about keeping that train rolling, right? So this, I'm just tracing this in pencil onto the leather, and I'm going to use a straight edge to sort of clean up those lines, because now I know my measurements are correct and I know what I'm aiming for, and I can confidently just start cutting out these pieces of the puzzle. And you always want to double check before you cut. I find especially like when you have a origami, like an opened up pattern, it's very easy to cut the wrong piece, right? And then you have to start all over again. Ask me how I know that. Right, so now back into the water. Again, I'm overdoing it with these soaks on this. I don't know why. I know better, but whatever. So that just, I think because I know I'm going to leave it overnight to dry, so it's fine. But typically you only need to do that for about a minute, right? So here it is, almost like cookie dough, right? So you could do it without this form, but I find when I shape it around this foam form, it also gives it the volume that I want, right? And again, using the popsicle sticks just so I don't get the clamp indentations into the leather. And I'll have to readjust that. And then here, you know, another little monogram. It's like the monogram Jedi pouch. I did just, there's no secret messages. I just got the Jedi font, you know, the Star Wars font, and just picked some random letters that I thought looked cool. No hidden messages there. Or maybe there is. Definitely not. All right, so there it is in my backyard. Put some weight on there, kettlebells. Those are getting some use. Definitely not exercising. All right, so now this is the next day, and it's like, did this work? I mean, we know it did, but at this moment I didn't, and it's like, oh yeah. Again, this is not canon. This is totally me improvising. I think a purist would be like, what the heck are you doing? Just skip that step. This is me just trying something different. I like staying within sort of the realm of the universe, but adding little details, right? This is not radically different, but you know, it's cool. So now here I have the pouch, and what I'm realizing now is now that it's all dry, those sides are a little funky, little design flaw there. So I'm just gonna adjust this very simply. So what we're gonna do next is, you know, traditionally you would sew this, but what I use is the E6000, right? That glue is very good with organic materials. So I'm gonna use some E6000 and glue this together. Now we could sew it, but then I would think it would make it less accessible to people. It adds another level of difficulty. Here, anybody can squeeze out glue and put on clamps, right? So we're gluing all these pieces together, and I just think that's the way to go. So now I'm gonna do two things. While my glue is setting up on the seams of this pouch, I'm going to, now this is the back piece, sorry I'm getting ahead of myself. And again, I'm just gluing this seam together. You could rivet it together, you could sew it, but gluing, right? Spread some glue, get rid of the squeeze out, clamp it, good to go. I feel confident in saying anybody can do that. So here I'm adjusting the flap of that pouch, right? So I trimmed down the sides because it was just not tidy looking, and I'm just tightening it up. So here I'm just, and that's the cool thing too, is like, so once I hit it with the water, it sort of re-softened it, if you will, and just wrap some elastic around that just to really make sure that conforms. And while that stuff's drying overnight, let's deal with the plastic pieces, right? So that's the metal one that I repurposed, that you can use that, or you can go online and find them, or you can even go to like Army, Navy and get some kind of buckle. And now what I'm doing is, again, I'm not sure I'm going to use this buckle, but inevitably this is future me saying, yes, I do use that. And the reason why is because I made this belt a little bigger to accommodate a bigger size human. This belt buckle is bigger than the metal one, right? So it just aesthetically is more pleasing on the belt that I'm creating. But you could certainly use the metal one that is repurposed from the costume, or you can buy them on Etsy, or you can just go to like Army, Navy and get like a military button. So now I'm sanding these pieces, and I'm hitting them with a filler primer. So here, this buckle I think was designed to be flexible, but I'm just going to fix it into sort of like a C shape, a subtle C shape, which is what the metal one is. And this is just a raw piece of filament that I'm just putting through here. Like I said, I think this is probably designed for some sort of like screw or something. And I don't know if I mentioned on the top, but I will link to this buckle file in the description, so look for it there. And then here I'm just sort of getting, it's a very slight angle, so I just have a little piece of something under there. It's cardboard or plastic, just to give me that little bit of lift. Little bit of super glue with the kicker. Now the super glue is a little all over the place on this, but I know I'm going to be sanding that, so I'm not too crazy. Hit that with the kicker, and then there's the buckle. And I'll just get rid of, you know, nip off those ends and sand that down. And yeah, that's looking really good. And it's a nice design. And I'll hit that with the gloss black like the other one, because I'm going to graphite these later. And then here is these like energy capsules. These are from the prequels. I just added these just for kicks. You don't have to do that. And then here's just everything in the backyard drying. I have the belt looped up because it kind of got a little deformed. And then here's, you know, everything's drying, right? It's all a process. I mean, in these videos, it's like I said, it's like a cooking show, but you know, it takes a couple days. So here what I'm doing is I'm pre-weathering the leather. So when you're weathering the leather, it's not an effect like with the props. It's like actual, like we're gonna bang this stuff up. So what I tend to do is I do it before I dye it. And I like to just bash it into asphalt and then, you know, rub it onto rocks, or, you know, some people actually have like specific rocks glued on sticks that they like to use. But here, like, you know, you can't overdo it. I just rubber mallet, bash it into the asphalt, scrape it along rocks. It's all good. So here on the flap of this pouch, cell phone pouch we're calling it, I want to use like a magnet clasp, right? So I have a big thick washer, and I have a rare earth magnet. And what I'm going to do is just take a thin piece of leather, and I'm going to sandwich the washer and the magnet within there, just so it has a little grasp. I think magnet to magnet would have been much more secure, but I didn't want to risk it sort of pulling away from the leather. So this is just like a light, because it's going through all that leather, it still is magnetized, but it's a little more subtle than if I went magnet to magnet. That would be like Kung Fu grip, right? Which in hindsight, that I probably should have done that, but what I did is fine. So here I just have this thin, almost like a calf's hide, almost like a deer hide. And again, the E6000, this glue is really great. Now what I'm doing, because I want to sort of keep going, is the E6000 is probably like 24 hours to cure. And what I do is put the E6000 and then just put like a little tiny bead of super glue just so that it holds into place while it's drying, if that makes sense. So here I'm making a template for a little piece to put the magnet on the inside. And, you know, that's all pretty straightforward. It's just a lighter leather. I think that maybe if I was a little more adventurous, maybe doing some kind of slit in the leather and sort of impregnating the leather with the metal and the magnet would be more effective. And that's maybe something I'll do in future, especially now because I just said it out loud. But in this case, I decided that would be easier, right? So now we're just going to do a little finishing on the leathering. This is like an edge tool that just sort of knocks, I don't know the technical name for this tool, but basically it just knocks off the edge, just cleans it up, right? These are just like little detail things that are subtle, but yeah, see how much cleaner that edge is compared to just the raw cut edge. And it's just a simple tool. Now this is the burnishing. Same thing. We're going to go over that edge that we just created. And this is just, you know, just friction. It just sort of tightens up that edge. These are all just basic, you know, 1,000-year-old like leather working tools. And there's a reason why those work. So here I just have the spill out of the glue that I'm going to carefully just sort of peel this off, because I know from past experience that if I don't get this squeeze out off, it's going to affect when I dye this and make it a different color. So I just took some time to sand that. And again, because we're going for a weathered look, it's fine to just sand that. So now, geez, when you're doing leather dye, make sure you wear gloves because leather is skin. And if you get that dye on your hands, you're going to be wearing it for a while. All right, so now with the dye, I just use a rag and just slop it on. Now you'll notice this looks pretty similar to when I do a wash, when I do a weathering. Pretty similar, right? It's again, we're not making a brand new pristine belt. I just put it on lightly, rub it around. It'll dry unevenly, which is good, which gives it a little life. And then here, what I tend to do with these pouches, like the inside and the backside, I make sure that I dye everything that I need to dye, right? Once I know like all my facing out and my hero surfaces are covered, then like off camera, I'll go with whatever dye I have left and dye the back and dye the inside of the pouch, right? But I don't prioritize that because you could run out of dye. There's everything in the sun. It's that time of the year. I can put everything outside. So while that's drying, going to do the graphite treatment on the buckles. Again, this is past to me, not sure which one I'm going to use yet, but I think it's good for you to see the options. And you see how much smaller that one is, which is fine. But like I said, because I made mine a big guy belt, double X if you will, that's going to be better. So here, you know, I have, again, these are from the prequels, so I'm sort of mix and matching eras. And I'm just going to do a dry brush on these. They're typically, from what I've seen, they're gold and silver. I've seen other color ones, but mine. And again, these are just little doodads I'm going to use to place on the belt just to give it a little visual interest. I don't even know if I'm going to use them all. Maybe I won't use them. So I hit that with a dry brush, and then, you know, of course, we'll seal it in with some clear. Now, this pouch that I've got it all sorted out, I need to put some holes in the back so that it can slip onto the inner belt, right? That thin inner belt. So I don't think I got this on film, but inside of that pouch is a piece of wood. So I just cut a piece of wood to the same size of that pouch, and now I'm just hammering these holes in there. That's the tool that's used for putting on a buckle, which I'll do later. And I'm using it to make the perfect size belt loop. So now I have the inner belt, the outer belt, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit, we just dyed that really heavy dye job. Now I'm just going to hit it with sandpaper. And what the sandpaper does is it just gives it sort of a little bit of sort of high and low separation, which just gives the belt a little life. Like I said, we're not going for like, oh, this is a brand new Jedi who just got a brand new uniform and just graduated from the academy. This is like an old SOB Jedi. So now I'm dealing with the belt. So the belt is kind of an illusion, right? So the buckle is not a real buckle. It's more of a visual. So because I'm putting these two pieces of leather together, it's a little too thick. So this razor tool, what it does is I'm thinning this leather in half because I'm going to fold it over and then it'll be the width of everything else, right? So here I decided, yeah, I'm going to go with the bigger buckle. So all I'm doing here is I'm putting the E6000. Like I said, that's the permanent bond. I will hit it with a super glue just to hold it in place so I can continue building, right? And like I said, this is a fake belt buckle. Like the front buckle doesn't operate. In some versions of the belt you can, but then you kind of lose the illusion of the prequels of like a futuristic belt, right? So now I have the buckle in place and clamp that together. That'll be dry, in the next day. So now I'm finding the center of the wide belt because it's all about that middle belt being on center. Now, for me to keep this on center, I am going to sort of deviate from the actual belt. I'm just going to put like 2 or 3 rivets as anchors. I was contemplating gluing it, but I feel like these rivets I'm okay with, and I think ultimately that's a case of, I don't want to say this backwards, function over form, right? So here I want to go for function. I want this to be, it's a belt, right? You don't want it to pop open. So here I'm just going to add a couple rivets that are doing 2 things. They're securing that inner belt so that it's aesthetically in the proper place, right? It's in the middle of the wider belt. But then also when I crank on this belt to tighten it around the waist, because that middle buckle is fake, it's not going to pull on that and it'll be an actual working belt, right? So here I have my pouch. So now we're starting to assemble the belt, and I'm sliding the pouch onto the inner belt. And that's what it seems to be in all the reference pictures that I see that, or at least in the prequels, any of the pouches and little utility belt type things hang off of the inner belt, right? So here I'm putting in the second rivet. So it's just 2 rivets on each side. I am taking care for them to be equidistant on both sides, but also you want a lot of slack in the back because this is going to be the real belt. So here I'm putting on an actual belt buckle, right? So same thing, you take that tool, it cuts out that center slot, the sort of hook of the belt goes through that. It's just 1 rivet. Making a belt is really the simplest, most satisfying thing to do. So there it is. That's a belt, but obviously, that's not a futuristic belt, but you'll see how that comes together in a second. So here I'm just marking the hole so I can make the holes for the eye holes for the belt. And then once you secure the belt, right, so that's around the waist, and then we have that sliding piece that we created, and then that is what's going to hide the buckle and make it a futuristic belt. And that's a nice, easy, cool looking solution. And I'm glad I put the text on the back there just because I think I'll be wearing this a lot without the rope. So these are Chicago screws. These are for like, if you want a pouch that's like force closed, by friction. And these are basically what's in the on the belt in the prequels, from what I can see. And these you just put a hole in there and then you screw them on, and they sort of they're what secures the belt in the middle. Like I said I use the rivets just to double down on that. Now, one thing I did that I had to make an executive decision. So equidistance, there's 2 sets of those rivets on each side. And my pouch was in the way, so it's sort of over there, but I put 2 aside if I ever take off that pouch so I can sort of make that all match up. So here are just some mink oil, and mink oil is like the magic, right? So when we're weathering, it's sort of that dust, that grease layer. With leather working, the mink oil is like that extra touch that is like, right? So all that sanding and weathering we did, again, you know, as we're doing the process, it looks like, oh, maybe that's too much. But now, once we give this leather a drink and we add the mink oil, then it all comes together, right? It's the hardest thing in the world, right? To make something for somebody. Like you're watching the process, and if you don't understand the steps, sometimes a lot of it just doesn't make sense until it's all done. And then it's like, oh, right? But while it's in the process, it oftentimes looks wrong. But there you see now it's all back together. And with weathering, it's all about like subtlety. But that ink oil, the ink oil, the mink oil really brings it together. All right, so now, again, I have like these throwaway afterthought, like these energy capsules, whatever they are. And now I'm kind of like going for it. So I got the dry brush. Now I'm just going to hit them with some rub and buff. Again, the ones that I see on Etsy and the ones that I see in the films are pretty pristine looking. You know me, I want mine to be all junked up, sort of like the bargain basement. He's been kicking around with these. And then now I'm going to seal that in with some gloss because I do want them to have a little bit of a sheen. Now here, this was like an afterthought. Everything's weathered and dirty, and my Chicago screws were really shiny. So what I'm doing here is I'm just hitting them with a really just cheap black spray paint, right? This is very rough and tumble. And then now I'm going to take steel wool and just take off most of it. And this just dampens the shine off of these. And because it's always weird, like, oh, here's this weathered belt with these brand new screws in it. And that just didn't work. So now I'm figuring out where to put. Now these energy capsules, I really could only fit 2, and that's fine. One I put in the pouch. And it's like, okay, that's telling more of a story. And then off camera, I put on this sort of key holder, and then that's like the fob that holds on the D-ring lightsaber. That lightsaber I always link to, that's one we made from the dollar store. And here's the beauty shots. Yeah, Jedi belt, leather. And I liked that buckle. And again, you don't have to 3D print. You know, that's just the way this went. I love my choice to put that embossing. Again, that's not canon. That's my own addition, but I think it's fine. And here's we'll take a little walk down the belt. It's a long belt, a lot of waist. And the embossing, see, it's just subtle. And now this really takes that inexpensive costume to the next level. Man, right? Oh, so happy with this. And like I've been hinting at, I kind of made this so it would fit me, right? So you would probably only need half of this leather. But it occurred to me, like, yeah, I could dress up as a Jedi, right? So, and maybe that'll happen in my fan film. Who knows? So yeah, very doable, very cool. And yeah, another 3D printing thing is I just made these little Jedi capsules. And, you know, I sort of mixed and matched from all the eras, the prequels and, you know, the originals and the cartoons. So, you know, I don't know. I'm just all about, like, just make it your own. You know what I mean? So I guess the only thing left to do now is fire it up. Okay. Okay. Firing up the belt. Now, this is the cool part. Like, this part, it's just like putting on a regular belt, except for a thick belt, right? So that's good. It's like a girdle, helps you out. All right, so let's get that. Okay. All right, so, all right, we're all buckled up. All right, and then we got this piece that covers up this, right? And then it makes it a future belt. Then we spin it, line this up, right? Yeah, right? Pretty straightforward. Oh, got my energy capsules right here. Saber, right on. All right. Well, as always, I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Love to read the comments, and be sure to check out the merch shop. We got the hats, shirts. Buying that really helps the channel. And, you know, I don't know. It's fine if you don't. But we're just putting it out there. And remember, I'm just here to help make sci-fi.